Very excited to introduce two illustrious speakers for today's session. We have Shankar Viswanathan actually both are from Oracle, and then Al Marciante, who was on our last session just before this, but Shankar actually kind of our bookend for this track for today. He did our first session, and then he'll be doing our closing session today. So thank you guys for presenting, and I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, great. Thank you, Danielle. Welcome, everybody. This is Al Marciante, and as mentioned, Shankar will be joining me here as our platform specialist and also around all the great features we have to support reporting and analysis. So we'll do a little bit of back and forth. So if you were on the last session of SmartView, you heard me talking the whole time pretty much. So this time, it's definitely Shankar is going to be carrying the load here as well as we go through it. And so we're going to cover several things here. So this isn't so much about getting into roadmaps and other things like deep detail in those areas. We want to do is talk about, customers are often confused, or they always wonder, what capabilities do I have in the cloud? What do I have for doing reporting and dashboarding and doing analytics and other things like that within EPM Cloud? And what capabilities do I have to maybe use something like OAC in conjunction with EPM? So that's kind of the goal of this, is for us to talk a little bit through those different areas, highlight what these different things are, because we have so many customers. We have a lot of legacy customers that may have come where all they had gotten at the time was planning and budgeting cloud service, which was our very first offering back in February 2014. And we've evolved to EPM Cloud. And we know we talked about this a little bit at Kscope last year. We talked about it at Open World, but then everything kind of went virtual, and attendance and knowledge sharing always gets a little challenging, and being able to juggle all these different things. So what we want to do here is really just kind of paint that landscape, kind of add color to all these different areas and functionality that's there. So that's kind of the goal we're doing here. But we also want to talk about data for, data to start with, because you may have multiple business applications going on, or business processes within EPM Cloud. You may have those instances where you have Essbase on-prem and you're using it to bring together data from multiple places. So I always think talking or addressing a little bit of data before you just jump into tools and what they do is very useful there. And then we'll cover, kind of our analytic options, for doing analysis, whether I'm on the web or whether I'm on a desktop. Reporting updates, so what are the different tools I have, what are the types of functionalities I have with reports, with reporting, and then Shankar and I will kind of, we'll monitor Q&A as we go through this as well. I think first to start, right? So, these processes, these may juggle around, and, one may become before the other, but obviously through any of these business processes, you have all the things that are happening beforehand. My users are entering forecasts, they're entering plans, they're entering budgets, they're entering, they're importing in GL data, they're doing consolidations, whatever that is. Data access at some level is kind of the first step, right? Whether I'm going directly against that source or whether I'm bringing it somewhere else to marry it with other data, data access is kind of the first step there. And then I kind of have this little iterative process of reporting and analyzing. I may have data updates that I do as part of that, or booking of a journal entry, but I'm still going through an analysis phase and a reporting phase. I'm drilling in, I'm looking at transactions, trying to find anomalies and going through that. And then for certain types of business processes or certain types of activities you're doing, there's also high probability that at some point you have to explain this to somebody. You have to produce some narratives, you have to produce some business commentary, you have to put something together that articulates the performance, the reasons why, steps being taken, how we're adjusting. And what's illustrated that more than anything has been obviously what everybody's been going through over the last 6 months. Everybody's business kind of has upended, and we've probably been in this analyze and report cycles more rapidly than we've been in the past, and constantly adjusting, tweaking our business strategies, because we're still getting different regulations, we have different things going on, we have different rules that we got to operate under that may vary state to state, country to country. So this has been, this has probably been, more important than ever before in how we do things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Shankar in to kind of talk us through kind of some of the data access to start.
Okay, great, Al. Thanks for that introduction there. I think so. Just from a data standpoint, as Al mentioned, I mean, coming in from on-prem, I know a lot of you are coming in from on-prem also. So we have always had this reporting Essbase full use license being used against EPM. So there's a widespread audience there in that space. So it's important to understand that Essbase is continuing as a framework within EPM, and also for us to in EPM Cloud itself. And with the new SKUs, we have uptaken the hybrid version. And as you see in the bottom footnote here, the 19C version of Essbase to some extent is already in EPM. We are testing out with the latest versions of Essbase to see when we can adopt them. So Essbase is part of the EPM culture, and it continues to be from on-prem days into cloud. So that's really the gist of this slide, to talk that you don't have to have just a pure Essbase OCI version. If you wanted to move to SaaS, then that option is always available to you if you want to move to the cloud. And that can be in silo for Essbase cubes residing within your on-prem, or if you want to do EPM in conjunction with Essbase. So the thumb rule here is really that if you are working with Essbase in conjunction with EPM, either in terms of the users overlapping, or if your data is primarily sourced from EPM, then it's important to consider EPM Freeform as your data source, data for destination for reporting. Next slide, Al. So I think that from a Freeform standpoint, really it's you can think about it as an Essbase in SaaS, right? That's the only option you have if you're going SaaS, full-blown for Essbase. Essbase and OCI is more infrastructure cloud. SaaS has its own benefits. I won't go into the details on that. Everybody who's familiar with EPM SaaS is familiar with that part of it. But from a Freeform standpoint, that's something new in the new SKUs we introduced. Two ways you can do this, right? If you're bringing in from Essbase from on-prem, you migrate your on-prem Essbase apps using LCM or OTL files being straight away brought into the app creation. We build out your app based on that OTL or LCM definitions, and you have your app up and ready. And right away you have access to pretty much every investment which the platform and the EPM side has made since more than a decade or 15 years, right? So all that web capabilities become instantaneously available to you as soon as you bring those cubes into EPM. And we also introduced the ability to build from scratch. So those are for applications or for customers who are bringing in from Excel models. That becomes a possibility now, where you can create from a web or through Excel app creation tools. You can create totally open dimensional cube structures within EPM. Next. So that's kind of the what's visualized in that bottom visual. So from a benefit standpoint, really, this is the SaaS deployment benefits, which I have in that bottom right section. It's pretty common across EPM and any SaaS vendor, actually. But it primarily applies from, if you're thinking about Essbase, where to take it. If you have a large EPM footprint, if you're sourcing data into those reporting cubes from EPM, then SaaS becomes a very good option for you, because then you don't have to move data across out of the SaaS into somewhere else and deal with the data latency. Everything is in SaaS with Freeform. So all the stuff which I also talked about in the platform session this morning, all that becomes available for Freeform also. So, so leveraging the platform benefits, that's really the big value add you get. So I won't walk through every bullet point here. This is a takeaway. So that really helps you with the from a Freeform standpoint to leverage all the platform benefits. And it's really important to understand that there is a lot of investment which has gone into the last decade into the platform, starting from PBCS days to last 6 years. And also everything which we do becomes constantly available to you as a Essbase customer moving into Freeform. And that interoperability is an important piece to understand, that EPM reporting becomes then something which you can leverage all the Groovy scripting, trickle feeding across applications through data management. All of that becomes instantaneously available to you with Freeform also. Next slide, Al. So there are some, obviously, I'm talking to customers, a lot of customers who are moving in from on-prem or their Excel applications into Freeform. So there are several questions which come in either from sales or from customers, which kind of have been brought up in the roadmap, right? So the most immediate thing we are looking to address is the multi-cube. This, obviously, we went down the single cube per application based on Essbase best practice of single database per application, but many customers would see some synergies across the cubes in terms of their dimensionality. So they are looking to have multiple cubes within the single application. So we are looking to have that in the near term within the next 6 months. Approvals currently is not supported for Freeform. That's again planned to be open dimensional. I covered that this morning, but Freeform benefits that way you can get approvals for Freeform since you're going to have your own dimensions without the planning dimensions in it. So you may not have scenario version. And then the dimension editing, which a lot of Essbase customers coming in, they want that similar EAS console type experience. So that's something which we are looking to have. That's a little far out, maybe at least a year out, but that's something we are looking at based on the feedback we received. And I think based on prediction and ML support, that really refers to the fact that a lot of the prediction and ML capabilities, which we constantly talk about on the cloud, require scenario version dimension because the platform traditionally always had that as a required set of dimensions. Now with Freeform, breaking all the rules, saying you can build your cube with any sort of dimensions you want, we need to adapt on the prediction side to make sure they can support the Freeform application types with open dimensional cubes. From an Essbase native feature standpoint, cell level is big. That's coming in the next 6 months. Within the next 6 months, that's a given. You guys, if you're coming from the Essbase world, you already know what that is. Planning dimensional is 4-dimensional at this point, 4 secure dimensions. That's being extended to the cell level. And there's a few other things, MPX queries being more enhanced. Smart View is the big piece. We have pretty much covered most of the stuff there, and I will touch on it in the next couple of slides when I'll cover Smart View. But 2 outstanding items there are the multi-member ad hoc, zoom in, zoom out, and the member alias in separate columns. 2 big asks in Customer Connect also. So they're coming in that sequence, multi-member zoom in coming in the next 2 to 3 months, member alias within the next 6 months. So that's really our plan for Freeform. Next slide, Alan. Okay, go ahead. That's Al's going to take over.
Great, and thank you for that. I think one of the key things that if your head was moving through all the things Shankar just went through, you get so much on top of being able to have this Essbase style cube, if you will, in EPM, that you really could look at that totality of functionality you get around it with all the great, Shankar talked this morning about Dashboards 2.0 and all the rich dashboarding capabilities, other things he'll talk about in here as well. So, keep in mind as we go through this, that becomes very attractive as you're evaluating for some of those custom Essbase apps where they might make sense to migrate to, or whether you're updating on premises, et cetera. So definitely great stuff. As mentioned within SmartView, so we're just going to cover a few quick slides on SmartView. We just did a session previously, so you can get all the updates on SmartView overall, including a lot of things around the EPM, cloud sourcing, or EPM cloud behaviors, et cetera. But some of the new features are flex forms. So flex forms are really, really powerful. They bring the capabilities of some of the ad hoc structured forms and some Excel features to bear when you're using these. So whether you're using some filtering capabilities across columns, whether you're want to keep only some rows and then add some different members in, reorder them, sort them, do other types of things while still retaining capabilities that are available within the underlying forms as you're interacting and updating data. It's very powerful. So it adds a new dimension to the way your users interact and the functionality they have available to them. And it is a feature that's enabled. So, it's not by default. They just don't open any form and then they have all these powerful capabilities there. It is something that goes into, when you're designing the form, if you're really looking to expose it as a flex form, there's some considerations, other things you want to do there. But definitely something very important that you want to take a look at. Member on the fly, being able to add members, those types of things. Office 365 web add-in we'll talk about in just a minute. But then also moving towards, as Shankar talked about, as customers are looking at Freeform, there's 2 types of profiles, right? Customers that are moving planning from planning on-prem and they're bringing it into EPM Cloud, and they may have been using the Essbase provider directly to connect and do interaction, query, et cetera, against their planning cube. Or I have these Essbase cubes and I want to bring them into the SaaS strategy here, and I want to bring them in, but I use these different capabilities through the Essbase provider. That's really where we're looking to add a lot of those features and make sure we get that parity, so that what you could do with Essbase that you couldn't quite do with the planning provider, making sure that you can do those things when you're in the cloud and you're connecting through the planning provider and working with it. So whether it's multi-parent Zoom, as Shankar mentioned, the member alias in a separate column, that's also really big for consolidation customers to have some of that functionality as well, the formatting, submitting without refreshing data, et cetera. So these are all things that we're working on, pretty much within the next 6 months or so, looking to get many of these things peeled off and implemented. So just FYI, as you evaluate that, just know that, if these are features you're using today with Essbase on-prem or with planning on-prem, that these are going to be available to you pretty much in the short term, because 6 months goes by pretty quickly. So this will be available in short order for your users. Just FYI, we want to make sure customers are aware of this, and we've kind of talked about this. Is that, you may have, as EPM has started to be expanded across the organization, whether you're dealing with strategic workforce planning, because now I'm delivering it to some of my HCM users, or sales planning cloud. I have some of my, I have some people with the sales cloud that are actually using planning there now, or, I'm just expanding out my deployment to more areas of the organization outside of finance. You may have users, they may be periodic, they may be just casual users that have activities they only need to perform so often. They might not have licenses for desktop deployed Office. They may actually only have a license for a subscription for accessing Office over the web. And so we did introduce a very thin client that sits in the web within Excel, where you get a lot of your functionality to interact with forms, to do all those different activities you have there as a user, and as well as some of the admin support, so the admin extension. So users can enter their plan, they can go ahead and run business rules, they can do mass allocate, they can enter comments or annotations or other features that the application supports, they can do drill through, et cetera. So this really opens it up to additional folks to participate that may not have been able to use it through the Office environment before. Of course, the web interfaces are always there for them. And this, our initial target was to support the EPM Cloud apps. So that's what we do, is the platform-based apps. So financial consolidation, planning, all the modules associated with planning, as well as tax reporting. So those are where our support is there. And it works whether you're running it in the browser or you have the native version of Office installed on a Mac. It runs there as well. If you're on Windows, you're still going to use the Windows version of SmartView. And then we'll continue to look at, not only expanding out to support Essbase and OCI and ERP, et cetera, which we need to expand it to, since those are cloud offerings as well. We're also working closely with Microsoft to extend out our coverage across the Office suite. So being able to do those features or functionality that you would do in Office in Word or in PowerPoint as well. So it's very close collaborative work that we have with Microsoft to expose functionality for us. And then we continue to drive the parity we have in the non-Windows version of SmartView and expose that. So now with analytics, we'll drive it over to Shankar to talk about the dashboards 2.0.
Great, thank you, Al. So again, the dashboards 2.0 is essentially a technology shift, going in from more what people understand as application design framework, the ADF framework, which many customers may already be using, to more of a JavaScript HTML5 based design using the latest technology stack available, which we call as JET inside of Oracle, is using the JET stack. The advantage of doing that is basically your charts and graphs become highly interactive and more with a better look and feel to them. We took also that opportunity to not just shift the technology, but also provide you a whole bunch of charts. We had about 13 charts supported in the existing dashboards or dashboard 1.0. With this new version release, we are supporting over 20 chart types. So and also we took an opportunity to make sure the design aspects are consistent in look and feel to other areas like management reporting or even OSC. So we looked at designs, canvas areas, and made sure that there is some level of consistency to the extent possible across these paradigms, right? So that's really our goal. And it's an evolution here from dashboard 2.0. It's not a one-time release. We did release a bunch of new charts within this, the waterfall, geomaps, as you see here. Those are key ones. And the table structure, which is shown on that left side here. That's a new where you can actually drop a form or create a table to quick analysis. Those are things which we introduced with this, but this is an evolution. We're going to release more in this new technology stack with all the forms and ad hoc supported within this. So that's really the goal here within the dashboard 2.0. Next slide now. So again, this shows you a good visual on the changes we made from a design standpoint to have a better look and feel and during the designing of the dashboards. And folks who are familiar with management reporting on the EPRCS side may see some consistencies here because a lot of things were brought in line to make sure we have overall consistency across. So that's really the goal here. Next slide. One of the new aspects which we are introducing into this dashboard 2.0, which we will evolve further and improve on, is really the quick analysis. So the whole notion here is to be able to search for data. We started with metadata in this quick analysis in dashboard 2.0 to be able to search for something and render that search results in a grid. So this is basically showing a table view in that screenshot of specific areas which you're selecting. So this is like, think of it as ad hoc on the search. But we're going to take it to the next level where you can start doing specific data-driven searches where you're looking at top 10, bottom 10 searches and render that immediately through a table view and then instantaneously convert that to a chart. So in this particular case, you can search for metadata. Instead of slicing and dicing, you would essentially pick from member selector or type ahead your search, and then instantaneously it'll deliver those results, and then you can convert that to a chart on the fly. So that's really the goal here, is to do more search-based dashboarding. Next slide. So this gives you a sense of some of the new chart types we have introduced. I'll just quickly walk through some of the key ones here. The table spark chart, I think that's basically allowing you to do more stock charts type, where you can have one column by data, and you can define any of the columns, combination of columns to be trending either by area chart or bar chart or line charts. And then the waterfall is big, that we have supporting multiple use cases with waterfall being introduced now. And that also brings in line the reporting and the dashboarding to be supporting waterfall. Again, combo charts was a big one. And the important point to note is that not only the types of charts we support now, because we have made that technology shift over to the new jet-based technology, now we can add more chart types very quickly, because those are libraries of chart types available within the jet technology framework within Oracle. So it doesn't take us much effort, relatively speaking, to introduce those new chart types. That's really the important takeaway from this. Next slide. Again, some more, the big one, two big ones here are the geomaps, which shows you that traffic lighting alongside. So we support world maps, the US city maps. We are also looking to support Google Maps in the future. And then the second big one is the combination of the bubble chart with the geomap, where you can actually put bubbles based on the size of the data and combine them with your geomaps, really. Some cool additions, as I said, we'll have more and more coming. Heat maps is on the way pretty soon, and some more. So if you have specific asks, put that out in Customer Connect, and we constantly monitor that. Next slide. So again, just shifting gears in terms of ad hoc, right? So ad hoc, I think Al talked about it in the Smart View context. You also heard it in the last session. But in terms of the cloud, a lot of customers expect to do ad hoc, not just in the Excel paradigm, but also in the web itself, because that really gives them the sense of cloud. And we have been doing a lot of investment in innovation inside of ad hoc on the grids. And that's something which we have already previewed with some partners, and we're going to be releasing in the short time frame, within the next 6 months time frame, which allows us to, the way we visualize ad hoc is a translation of insight to action, right? If you have some issue you're looking at in a form or in a report or in a prediction, which is auto predict, and or you're looking at it in a dashboard, you want it to be goal oriented. You want to take some action. You want to find out what's going on, and ad hoc is the pathway to get there. And so we want that, the segue, which means you're in a dashboard, you're in a form, or you're in a report, or you're in prediction, and you want to take the next step is find out more by drilling into that details. That's what ad hoc helps you. So that transition point is what we are trying to make seamless, apart from all the technology changes we're making in ad hoc. So that's really the gist of this depiction here. And this visual is to show that ad hoc is where we're trying to bring everything together, no matter which artifact you're using for your use case, and to bring that together through ad hoc. Next slide. This gets into a little bit of granular details, and I think some of you may already be at that level where you can digest this information. So bear with me here. So essentially where customers are currently in the cloud is native mode, which means that's a default mode. If you're using cloud-based Smart View for ad hoc, that means you're in a native mode. But we also introduced a few months back a standard mode, and that's where we're really going with all the enhancements which I'll refer to. It's multi-grid, in-sheet POV, submit without refresh. Those are all in there, but they can only be used within standard mode. And all the roadmap items in terms of saving ad hoc grids and multi-member zoom in, all of that stuff is coming in the standard mode. So our focus is on standard mode. Make sure we fill the gaps. The saving of ad hoc grids and Excel formatting are two gaps which we don't support in standard mode, but we do in native mode. Once those are filled in, standard mode becomes the pathway for all customers to be on, because that's the way we want to support too, because we did a lot of changes for multi-grid and in-sheet POV, and we want to make sure that's the pathway which most customers are on, instead of having two ways to go to do ad hoc, right? And the same way with web ad hoc, essentially, the reason it's a sub-bullet of standard is that we are going to release it when it is supported within standard mode, and that's going to be in the next couple of months, right? So that's the pathway for future. And just talking a little bit more on the web ad hoc, essentially, this is the first introduction where for the new grids, we have put a lot of investment to make our grids fast, from a cell-to-cell navigation, from scrolling, being able to support large size grids and instantaneous refreshes. When you load the grid, it needs to load fast, near zero lag time. All that is coming to the fore through ad hoc first, right? So that's where and then we are also right now working with these new grids to support forms. So since form has a much more broader footprint in terms of users using it, we'll introduce it with ad hoc, and then as customers give us feedback, we will be working through the forms, which will release within the next 1 year timeframe for forms also. But you're going to see this pretty soon in the web ad hoc, and you're going to like what you see. We have already previewed it, and we got some good feedback from partners who have already run through this. Next slide. Here you go. Al, you want to take over?
Sure. So now we're going to transition a bit from the analytics or the analysis, visual analysis, things that we talked about. So talking a little bit about reporting. So, one of the things I want to highlight here is, aside from the reporting tools, just a little bit about the narrative reporting business process real quick, right? So this is within EPM Cloud. It was previously referred to as EPRCS. It's now just called narrative reporting. And it really contains three main components around it. One is true just kind of reporting that you do with FR, that you do with, in that style of mode. I need to produce some financial statements, I have some grids, I run books, I do some bursting, I send those out to folks with attachments to emails as a PDF so they can come in and look at it. As Shankar mentioned, very similar design paradigm that you saw with dashboards. So that consistency of creating reports will be the same as when you're doing interactive dashboards. So those types of things there. And it's also an area that we're starting to pursue some narrative generation, conditional text generation, other things within there to start to add descriptions and text and other things as part of the report. And those things come in whether they're specifically on the report that's visible, or it could be on a hidden chart object or a table object. So for example, I may be looking at a P&L or something, but I could be generating narrative in a box on that report that's describing different performance from an income statement standpoint, and just highlighting those so that when they're looking at their P&L, they kind of understand, some other things that may be at a different level, or kind of how the overall business did or something else. So just ways in which people can operate with that or provide notes directly on there. Secondly, we have what we call our report packages, which are a little bit more about that collaborative nature, where people are putting together a more narrative-based, whether they're PowerPoint or presentation-based report packages, whether they're Word textual-based report packages like a briefing book or something else that you need to provide, where people are actually adding in narratives and they're going through a cycle as they go through that. These reports have periodicity to them, they roll forward, so all those capabilities to be able to do that, along with cloud refresh of data. So whether your embedded content is coming from SmartView-based Excel, or whether they're coming from reporting content via management reports, you can just refresh that in the cloud, meaning I don't have to download this workbook to my client, do a refresh all to update all my tables and charts from data coming from EPM Cloud sources, and then push it back up to narrative reporting in order to let the system automatically push that to all of my documents and everything else in this report book. You can do that all in the cloud without ever bringing it down. And then lastly, we have kind of the disclosure management, regulatory reporting piece, where we also do some auto tagging and use some pattern recognition and natural language processing to kind of go through and do auto tagging to reduce kind of the tedious task of tagging, especially if you're doing it for the first time or you're migrating over from another vendor. You don't have to start from scratch and do that. So just a couple things in there. Here, because obviously planning, consolidations, account reconciliations have been very well embraced business processes. We have a lot of customers on narrative reporting, but just one thing I want to highlight here, especially if you're an on-prem customer, you're kind of thinking about, where do I start in the cloud, or maybe I want to add something that I'm not doing today. So as opposed to migrating an on-prem app into the cloud and kind of going through that process, maybe I want to address something that's inefficient in my org now, where I can get my feet wet in the cloud and get action there. So we have a lot of customers that are using, again, for example, hybrid, right? I'm sourcing my data from HFM, so I have my workbooks, my Excel content, and I want to go embed that so that I can do my report packages and all the other narratives and other things around that. But I want one way to just push all that into the cloud easily. So you could do it with on-prem, you could do it, across ERP, EPM, Essbase, the management reporting tool that's in narrative reporting can report on all of those sources from a single instance or a single deployment of management reporting. So I can mix those sources on a single report, or within a single report book. I could have things that are coming from multiple places. And so those are just kind of some examples of some of those use cases there, and the things on the right we kind of talked about. The value of these report packages, most customers may say, hey, I do some of that in SmartView today. I copy paste into Word, I do these things, or I copy paste into PowerPoint, which is okay, but we know the challenges of doing the copy paste, the formatting, the rolling forward to the next period, changing the POV, updating variables that may be throughout that document. Those are all things that aren't done very easily when you're using kind of a SmartView approach. Plus, you usually deal with a very large document. So this really allows you to go through. When you get this PDF, some of these links are live here. You can go learn more about report packages. But the goal here is, these are those types of deliverables that you need to put narratives together to deliver to some stakeholders, whether they're internal, whether they're external, whether they have direct access to content or not. These are things we do every day. We're always like, hey, we saw this performance, why did this happen? And then you sit back and you start to put together that response, and it usually goes up some level of review before we're going to go put it in front of a management or a steering committee or something else. This automates that whole process. It makes a person responsible for delivering these things job much easier, because they have one place to go look. The other part that we talked about was a management reporting tool. So, this tool is out there, as mentioned. This tool itself can report from all these different sources today. So whether you're dealing with EPM Cloud applications, being planning or consolidation, tax, etc., or whether I'm going against Essbase OCI, whether I'm dealing with ERP Cloud, whether I want to integrate this directly into ERP's financial reporting center, because I want to get all my EPM reports to my ERP users that have access to that data, you can do all those things. So management reporting within narrative reporting provides this, but this module is also going to be going into the EPM Cloud platform, so that we could eventually move away from FR in the long term, right? So we'll talk more about that in a minute. But not only is this tool directly integrated to that narrative reporting process, It also gives you the full feature of just a standalone reporting tool. So you have the books, you have the bursting and distribution through email to users that I want to deliver reports to. I have the new designer paradigm, I've updated charts, all those other capabilities available to you. So, so just, FYI on that, you will be seeing more of this regardless of what EPM Cloud business process you're using. You'll see it as we start to roll it out within there. Now, when it's implemented within the platform, and our goal is to be doing this in the short term, so you'll start to see this surface end of CY20, early CY21, so next 3 months or so, you should start to see this. It's been in preview. We've gone through it for a while. We've been working really hard as we've advanced MR to make sure that these features are getting there. But you will have financial reporting still available to you. So that's not going away in the short term, but we'll see customers start to migrate away from it. So you'll have this available to you when you go into reports in the platform. You have a tab. It'll just be listed as reports. You can, its integration with the platform is great because it allows that POV management and last use POV and last use members, those types of things to come in. So you could just use that as you go across. It's easy drag and drop. We migrate existing FR reports into here, so you're not starting from scratch and rebuilding reports. So if you have a large, robust set of reports you already have in planning, that's fine. You could choose to migrate just one and start to play around with management with reports when it shows up there, or you can migrate the whole library if you like. And it'll let you know for any given report if there was something in that report that it couldn't migrate. It would let you know what the issue is that you could then go resolve. But it's all within that unified repository within the platform. So it'll be totally integrated, part of LCM, everything else that's there. So security, et cetera. So just FYI, you will start to see this showing up as I mentioned, within the platform, and we'll look for, we're always interested, as Shankar said, in feedback, enhancements, other things as you go forward, but this will be the area that we start to address longstanding enhancements like bursting a report book or bursting a book or cascading, bursting into Excel, right? So I want to cascade an FR report along a POV and have it just burst into Excel sheets in a workbook, for example. We won't be doing that in FR, but we will be doing that in management reports. And so that's an area, that we'll continue to innovate in and advance beyond what we have today. Okay. Shankar, how about talking about OAC a bit with EPM?
Yes, so this is something which we already introduced in the June timeframe. So I think some customers are already starting to use this. Direct Connect allows you the capability to, not have to generate an RPD to create a report in OSC. So you can just, we leverage the ADM driver, which is what we use for FR, to basically pass the data on to OSC to create those reports, right? So any visualizations which you create inside of OSC essentially can just feed off of the data which is residing inside of EPM. So this is again needs the Oracle OSC license also, but also requires the EPM license to work with it. So it's quite popular with the dashboards 2.0 coming, and there's multiple options available to you. And we'll cover that in a later slide in terms of when do you use what, but Direct Connect allows you really to leverage the EPM data across planning, close, tax. All of these can be used for creating reports in OSC. So huge benefit for customers, especially those coming on board with both OSC and EPM Cloud. So again, this is available through the Enterprise and the Professional editions. I believe the desktop was coming soon. I'm not sure of the timeline for that. Support for the EPM Direct Connect, but I think with the two Enterprise and Professional edition, it is supported at this point. That's really the gist of this, and those are OSC-based licenses. Next slide. So again, just to close off, we just wanted to give you a visual on the reporting options you have available. Analysis-wise, you have the Excel Smart View-based ad hoc. You have the web-based ad hoc coming in pretty soon. We already have that, but it's not as robust as the one we're coming out with. So that's really where we are taking analysis portion. And when ad hoc is out and we're going to embed it within the dashboards itself, so dashboards become one place where you can actually read, write, calculate, analyze, and also visualize in one single place. So dashboards will essentially pick up the ad hoc as soon as ad hoc is released so that we can do all of that within a single dashboard. And same, I think we talked about reports. They will be something which you can use within a single instance, or you go on to multi-instances. That's where you start doing more narrative reporting. And I think we cover that in the next couple of slides in terms of which you use when. So a lot of options based on where your use case is and what your footprint is in terms of deployment. We leave it up to the customers to decide what is their best path forward. We want to provide the tool sets and the options to you to make sure you're leveraging the best what Oracle has to offer. So again, this kind of closing slide gives you a sense of when to use what. This question comes up quite often among discussions with partners and also with customers because there are so many options available. This hopefully clarifies to you that if you want to do, form type activity of reading, writing, calculate, and also visualize at the same time, and it's EPM wide and EPM centric, then dashboards is the way to go. If you are doing reporting, consumption of data is more, and distribution and printing is more the way, then obviously reports with FR and then with the new management report replacing that going forward, that becomes a pathway for you. And it's more relevant if your data is EPM instance specific. And narrative reporting, I think Al elaborated pretty well on that. It's more EPM-wide collaborative, and its purpose is more internal and external statutory and regulatory reporting, right? So you can author, review, publish. So it really expands that reporting framework much broader than you have in reports, specifically in MR or FR. OSC comes in, okay, when do I use OSC versus dashboards in EPM? One thing obviously to keep in mind is that second bullet, OSC is read-only, it's visualization. It's when you want to commingle data from EPM alongside data from elsewhere, ERP or CX Cloud. All of that data, when it's coming through, and EPM just is another source, that's when OSC becomes the place where you go to for your users, right? It's not domain specific. And also from mobile, right? I mean, the EPM side, we haven't seen much adoption at all on the mobile side. So we are not really focused on that effort. So OSC becomes a pathway for customers who are looking for phone-based applications. Then OSC has run a wonderful job there. So that becomes an option available to leverage. I think that's, was that the last slide, Al?
Yep.
Yep.
And so there was one question, Shankar, that maybe you could answer that came in. When you were talking about Direct Connect for OSC with EPM, does that work with the pixel perfect reporting option within OSC? I don't know if that's BI Publisher or what's being referred to there, but.
Yeah, I don't think that should be an issue. I don't, I haven't seen anything which will hinder that. I mean, Direct Connect only allows a different mechanism for connecting into the source. It doesn't really affect anything on the OSC side. So I believe my answer would be yes on that. I can double check that.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them in Q&A. Otherwise, we'll give it a few seconds here, or 20-second countdown. I do want to thank you all for attending today. Will management reporting be part of current license after it replaces FR? Yes. As we innovate within the platform and we push more functionality there, things like you saw with Dashboards 2.0 and other things, there's not an additional monetization to get that piece in there, right? Our goal is to streamline what we do, have one code line to support and other things. So if we replace that and then we charge for it, we'd have to keep FR around longer, and it really limits our innovation forward on that. So no, you're not going to have an impact from a license perspective. It'll just be part of your license.
I think just to expand on that, Al, I think that applies to every platform feature, which we talked about in an earlier session this morning. Unless there is a technology dependency on something, which, like for example, auto predict, which is not available for PBCS customers because it has a dependency on hybrid. Unless there is such technology dependency, it will be available by default to all customers across all licenses.
Okay, I had a question on the auto mapping or auto tagging in XBRL. Currently, today, it's for SEC filings only, so it's not for EU, the ESMA, ESEF yet. But auto tagging generally works by looking at your last filing. So for ESMA, I know in Europe it's a new, and you're mainly doing phase financials, so the tagging isn't as heavy to go through the first time around because you're mainly just doing high-level financials and a few other things. So right now it's for SEC filings, and largely what we do there is we pull down the previous one mechanism that we do it. We could pull down your previous filing along with the taxonomy that was used, and then we just tag up that document, get it all caught up, and then you can roll it forward to the next period, and now you're just dealing with net changes that need to be tagged. So that's kind of at a high level how it works. Okay. I think we're done. I don't see any other questions. So thank you, Shankar, for helping out today on this, and thank you everyone for attending. And we look forward to, as Shankar said, if you're not on Customer Connect, definitely get on Customer Connect. Lots of great events. Shankar does a lot of platform-based webinars and gives the latest and greatest that's there. It is where our idea labs and our enhancement process is now. So if you have new charts you need or other things, you can put those into idea labs. You can vote on other enhancements that are there or add your use cases to them. And then of course you have the forums to ask any questions you have, where not only we monitor it, our implementation partners like Interrel and others monitor it to add their expertise. Other customers share their insights for those that have already gone down the journey or solved things. So it's a great resource if you're not on it, but you have some cloud deployment from Oracle. Definitely get into Cloud Customer Connect. It's a great community that's out there, and we want to continue to see it grow.
And one more point, Al, before we close off. For folks who wanted to know more on the Freeform versus Essbase discussion, there is a panel discussion tomorrow. I believe it's at 11 a.m. Central Time. So I will be part of that discussion along with the Essbase PM. So any questions there on that side, which we covered early part of this section, we can readdress or ask you questions there too. So look forward to that session tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific. Sorry, 11 a.m. Central.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that should be a great session. Okay. All right, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much.